The Tennessee Titans finished the 2023 season with a 6-11 record and missed the playoffs for the second straight year. It was a very frustrating year for the Titans as they let several games slip away from them, and shortly after a Week 18 victory over the Jags, former head coach Mike Vrabel was fired. It's a very big deal anytime a head coach is fired because more often than not, when a head coach is fired, it's not just one guy losing their job while everyone stays and tries to do a better job next year. No, it's usually several guys getting fired, and along with not only losing their jobs, their families are usually impacted in a pretty big way too. There's no doubt 2023 was a disappointing year for the Titans, but there was a lot of roster overhaul this offseason, and it was a lot of out with the old and in with the new. And we are starting to see how current GM Ran Carthon is building his football team for the future. I really believe from where this roster was when they fired Mike Vrabel 6 months ago to where they are today, the Titans are one of the most improved teams in all of football heading into the 2024 season. But how will they do this year? Well, we're going to break it down in today's video. Now let's begin. And we are starting today's video by taking a look at what the Titans did in free agency. Tennessee was a very active team in free agency, and to be completely honest, I thought they were going to trade for Bengals receiver T. Higgins and have him be Will Levis's go-to guy for the next several years. But they didn't, and went out and signed receiver Calvin Ridley from the division rival Jags. They also signed center Lloyd Cushenberry, running back Tony Pollard, and even brought in Tyler Boyd on a cheap, one-year $2.4 million deal too. While none of these players are elite or top 3 or 4 at their positions, one thing Ran Carthon knew he had to do entering the year was, as simple as this sounds, get better offensively and give his quarterback a chance, which he did. And we will break down more of what to expect from the Titans offense later in the video, but I cannot emphasize how excited I am to watch the Titans defense play this year. Losing Azeez Al-Shaair and Denico Autry to the division rival Texans was not ideal, and I really would have liked to have seen them retain Azeez, but as we all know, the NFL is a business. Now, I don't want to downplay what Denico Autry did for this team last year, as he had over 50 pressures and had 11.5 sacks, which is great production from any pass rusher, and any team would gladly take that, but for where this franchise is headed, I don't blame them for letting Autry walk, and I don't think even Titans fans would say they're going to try and win a Super Bowl this year. So letting a 34-year-old pass rusher leave while you have a first-year head coach and a first-year defensive coordinator too for that matter in Denard Wilson, well, letting Autry walk was for the better in the long run. Throughout a few team previews we've done so far in the series, corner depth has been a big concern I've had with nearly every team, but I really like the 3 big corners Tennessee has when healthy entering the 24 season. Titans fans best of all know third-year corner Roger McCreary is one of the more underrated corners in all of football, and he presents a challenge for any receiver when lined up against him. He was picked on a bit during his rookie year back in 2022, as most rookie corners are, but rebounded nicely in 2023, and in 542 coverage snaps last year, allowed 0 touchdowns. But having just one solid corner is never enough, because teams can easily line their receiver up on the other side of the field and throw away from a corner, as most corners do not trail receivers throughout an entire game, and the Titans also have Chidobe Awuzie and L'Jarius Sneed. Awuzie was a second-round pick for the Cowboys back in 2017 and signed a 3-year, $36 million contract with Tennessee this offseason, and while I do have concerns with corners that are approaching age 30, the Titans aren't going to be asking him to be one-on-one with Nico Collins for 70 straight plays, or they're not going to ask him in their season opener against Chicago to lock up DJ Moore and hold him in check for the entire game. Awuzie is a solid corner, and while he's not going to haul in 5 interceptions this year, with 3 of them being pick sixes, what he will do is be a solid starter and show up week in and week out and be a good player for the Titans defense. And that's what they need from him. Not every player is a superstar, and that's fine. But a move I liked a lot this offseason was when the Titans acquired veteran corner L'Jarius Sneed from the Chiefs for a 2025 third-round pick and a swap of seventh-round picks. Sneed has been a very good player over the past few years and has been one of the most consistent players on the Chiefs defense during this time. And whenever there's a player like Sneed that becomes available, a guy exiting his rookie contract or about to exit his rookie contract that's looking to get paid, and then have a team with a lot of cap space available step up and make the trade to go get him, well, I am all for this trade every single time. Period. Acquiring a player of L'Jarius Sneed's caliber for a third-round pick is pennies for what he's going to bring to this franchise. And I know the next thought is always, well, you have to pay him, and man, what a tough situation to be in, to have to pay good players versus a third-round pick that's a year away from even contributing to our roster, especially while we have a quarterback entering his second year on a rookie contract. This move alone was an A-plus move by Ran Carthon, and another reason why I like this is because of how much of a tone setter Sneed is. We've all seen the clips of Sneed pressing guys and jamming guys at the line and frustrating the hell out of opposing receivers over the past few years. I do not say this about a lot of players, but it certainly applies to L'Jarius, and it's that he is a dog and he plays with that mentality, and you see it every single Sunday. And these are the types of guys you want in your locker room as you are a rebuilding franchise trying to go back to the top. But I also really like the Titans' pass rush, and I have decently high expectations for this defense. I am very eager to see what Denard Wilson brings to the table as a DC, but I also think the Titans will quietly be one of the better defenses in all of football this year. They had 4 players have 40 or more pressures last year in Autry, Harold Landry, Jeffrey Simmons, and Arden Key, and I think that will be much of the same this year, minus Danico Autry, of course. Jeffrey Simmons is the best player among this bunch and had 47 pressures in just 12 games last year before his season ended prematurely. There's a few reasons as to why I'm pretty high on the Titans defense entering the 2024 season, and the first is I think they have a very talented group and improved from a team that already finished in 16th in points per game last year. They also forced just 14 turnovers over the course of the entire 2023 season, which obviously isn't good, and they ranked 31st in this category. The Titans offense also turned the ball over 20 times, which by the way isn't bad, but when you have a -6 turnover difference for a team that already cannot score the ball offensively, well, you're going to be put in a lot of bad situations as a defense. And by having an improved secondary and a defensive line that can routinely get after the quarterback, I think they're going to force more turnovers this year naturally. It's incredibly hard to go 2 straight years forcing just 14 turnovers as a defense, especially for how talented of a group this is. And one other big thing that will also help the Titans defense this year is they should be much better offensively, as there were plenty of times throughout the 2023 season where either Andre Dillard or Jalen Duncan would give up a big sack to start the drive, and the offense would have to climb out of a 2nd and 19 hole on their own 16-yard line. That, in turn, of course, affected the defense, because with how bad the weaponry was for Will Levis last year, well, they would end up going 3 and out and give the opponent the football in decent field position, and the Titans would be fighting an uphill battle. So, through improvement from the secondary, staying healthy up front, and by playing more complementary football this year than they did last year, I really like where the Titans' defense is heading into this season. Their run defense was already good last year, and they added a mammoth along the defensive line in second-round pick T'Vondre Sweat. The 2023 Titans run defense finished 7th in yards per carry allowed and 4th in rushing touchdowns allowed, and they should be good up front again this year. The only real concern I have with this defense is the play at inside linebacker. I am admittedly not the biggest Kenneth Murray fan, and if there is any move to criticize that Ran Carthon made this offseason, it would be signing Kenneth Murray. Jack Gibbons played well during the 2023 season, and I hope he has a year similar to last year, because I think he can be a starter for the Titans at linebacker for the next few years. But I would have rather had Tennessee go almost any other route than signing Kenneth Murray, based on what we saw during his time in LA. But aside from Murray, I like this defense a lot and think they are going to be one of the better units this year. And a defensive line with T'Vondre Sweat and Jeffrey Simmons is going to be downright scary. As for the Titans offense in 2024, there are a few main goals. The first, of course, is to protect Will Levis a hell of a lot better than what they did in 2023. For reference, all three of Will Levis, Ryan Tannehill, and Malik Willis were sacked a combined 64 times. Now, if you know anything about the Washington Commanders' year last year, especially pertaining to Sam Howell, then you know Sam was sacked a lot. And Sam was sacked 65 times, which would be one more than the Titans quarterbacks were sacked throughout the entire 2023 season. Bryce Young was sacked 62 times, and for reference, no other quarterback in the NFL was sacked over 50 times. So when Titans fans complain about their offensive line from last year, rightfully so by the way, and say that Will Levis didn't have a chance, they weren't lying. That is the first and foremost goal of the 2024 Titans, and to be honest, I'm not just saying this because it's the Titans preview. I genuinely think they will do a much better job of it in 2024, not just because it's hard to imagine getting worse, but there's a few contributing factors to this. Number one, of course, is the selection of J.C. Latham, and I think J.C. Latham is a better player now than either of the tackles were for them last year, mainly Jalen Duncan and Andre Dillard. The Titans had offensive line problems across the board, and it was not just a Dillard and Duncan problem. But with the addition of J.C. Latham at left tackle, and with the addition of Lloyd Cushenberry at center, I also think that will help improve second-year left guard, Peter Skoronski's level of play as well. Peter was the best offensive lineman the Titans had in 2023, but I also think it's fair to say that Peter was weighed down by the poor play around him, and I am a firm believer that, if you have one or even two bad offensive linemen, that they can really bring the entire unit down just because the offensive linemen in between them that in theory should be better, like Peter it will be in 2024, they're not comfortable with the guys around them. They don't necessarily trust the guys around them. Obviously, they're going to say in interviews that they do and that, they ride or die for the team and all of that, but I really think that Peter was set up to fail last year a lot like Will Levis was. And this, of course, doesn't even get into the whole conversation of the wide receivers that the Titans fielded in 2023 behind DeAndre Hopkins. Outside of DeAndre Hopkins, the players Will Levis was throwing to last year were Chigakonkwo, a tight end who I don't think is bad, not elite by any means, but not bad, Chris Moore, Nick Westbrook-Akine, and Treylon Burks. GM Ran Carthon, of course, knew that had to be improved entering the offseason along with the offensive line, and he went out and signed Calvin Ridley and Tyler Boyd, both signings which I loved for this franchise. Now, there was a lot of controversy initially regarding the Calvin Ridley signing, but to be honest, I was all for it for a few reasons. The first and foremost is, of course, Ridley upgraded the Titans' receiving room, and the second was there was, and I say quotations here, but only about 46 of the 92 million was guaranteed. So the reality is, if Calvin Ridley is a free agent bust for the Titans, it's not really going to matter in the grand scheme of things, because it's not like Tennessee's not going to be able to pay any players because Calvin Ridley was a free agent bust. It's not like Will Levis's contract is expiring next year and that they won't be able to pay Will Levis because they have so much money committed to Calvin Ridley. That is, of course, in the worst case scenario. Now, I do think Calvin Ridley will be fine, and I think the Titans have a very real chance where they have 3 700-plus yard receivers this year, including 2 1,000-yard receivers in Ridley and Hopkins. As for the running back room, Derrick Henry is out and Tony Pollard is in. For the 2023 Titans, Derrick Henry and Tyjae Spears combined for 460 touches, with Henry receiving 308 to Tajae's 152. If there are 460 touches to split between Pollard and Spears this year, I think the number will be somewhere around 240 to 220, and I think it'll be far more 50-50 than it obviously was with King Henry last year and a rookie third-round pick Tyjae Spears. I also think that will benefit Pollard more, as I don't think he is a definitive RB1 in the NFL, and I don't think he's really that kind of back to sustain that type of volume year after year after year, and I think 2023 showed that for Tony Pollard during his his time with Dallas. I think having a running back by committee with Pollard and Spears would be extremely beneficial for both players, and I actually think Spears will be one of the better candidates to break out, not just for the Titans this year, but really in all of football, and I think he's in a pretty good situation, all things considered. If I had to project a stat line for Tyjae Spears, I think it'll be around 600 or 700 rushing yards with another 350 or 400 receiving yards, and have around 7 or 8 total touchdowns in 2024. Titans rookie impact in 2024, we will be focusing on 3 main players, and they are J.C. Latham, T'Vondre Sweat, and linebacker Cedric Gray. Pertaining to J.C. Latham, in theory, yes, he was a little overdrafted, but the reality is on draft night, you can't sit there at pick 7 and say, all right, let's trade back to pick 9 or pick 10, pick up an extra 3, maybe even a 6 next year, and be sure that our guy is still going to be there. Obviously, in Madden, that's a perfect world, and, in the worst case, you can, quit the game and then start over, but you don't play with fire on draft night, especially pertaining to a franchise left tackle, which we, of course, hope J.C. Latham is. The biggest thing with J.C. Latham is he will be an improvement, which the Titans desperately needed from 23 to 24, and he will also give Will Levis a chance, which he most certainly did not have at times throughout the 2023 season. Now, for T'Vondre Sweat, he is not just a 365-pound defensive tackle that you sit in the middle and clog, and if you try to even run at him, he will reach his arm out, he'll tackle a guy, and, basically like a video game, just shove him down, and the next play is there. He is pretty agile for his size, and believe it or not, he actually had 29 pressures for the Longhorns last year, and if he works out, I mean, it's going to be one of the better value picks in all of the 2024 draft. Sweat has serious potential, and I really like the landing spot, especially for a defense that already has a very good pass rusher in Jeffrey Simmons, and an interior rusher at that, so I really like the landing spot for T'Vondre, even if it takes him a little bit of time to adjust to the physicality and the strength of the NFL level. Now, for linebacker Cedric Gray, I have some hope here. As you guys know, and obviously heard already, I'm not the biggest fan of Kenneth Murray, and in the best case scenario, I think Cedric Gray could be a starting linebacker for this team midway through the 2024 season, and then take over that starting job and be the starter for the next couple of years. That is the best case scenario for Cedric Gray, and I hope that happens. That would be a very successful pick, and it would be a successful career for Cedric. Now, this team did not have a 3rd round pick because they made a trade during the 2023 draft to trade next year's 3rd round pick, which of course would be 2024, so that they could go up and get quarterback Will Levis. Now, one player that I liked for the Titans on day 3 of the draft, aside from Cedric Gray, was pass rusher Jalen Harrell from Michigan. He was drafted past the 250 mark, but I think there is a decent chance he makes the final 53-man roster, and if he does, he may be a situational pass rusher in year 1, but overall, aside from J.C. Latham, I wouldn't expect necessarily all that much rookie impact from the Titans 2024 class, and I think T'Vondre Sweat will see the benefits, or provide the benefits, in 2025 and beyond. As for the Titans' schedule in 2024, obviously since they're in the AFC, they're going to play some very difficult teams, which includes but not limited to the Bills, Dolphins, and Bengals. Now, we didn't include any of the other AFC South teams because obviously we know they will play them a combined 6 times throughout the year, but what 2024 is about for the Titans is the development of quarterback Will Levis. That's it. If Will Levis is not the guy, great. We know that for 2025 and beyond. But the ultimate goal is for Brian Callahan and Will Levis to be the next great head coach and quarterback duo of the Tennessee Titans. From a win projection standpoint, I'm not going to sit here and say they're going to be a 4-win team after they were a 6-win team last year and substantially improve the roster. Having said that, I also don't think they're going to go from 6 wins to 12 wins and be the number 1 seed like they were back in 2021 and potentially go to an AFC Championship game like they did back in 2019. The rest of the AFC South is much improved from where it was a few years ago, and that's also going to affect not only the Titans' win totals, but everyone else's win totals in the division. So if I had to project a realistic record for the Titans, I think they'll be anywhere in the 6-9 win area this year, and to be completely honest, I would be surprised if they make the playoffs. If they do, go for it. I just would be surprised with how many loaded teams there are in the AFC if the Titans are one of the top 7 seeds after week 18 of the regular season. Now, one long-term concern I have with the Titans is the fact that Calvin Ridley and Tyler Boyd are both on the wrong side of 30 along with DeAndre Hopkins. So while they did improve the roster and while Rand Carthon had to improve the roster this offseason, which again, credit to him for doing so, it's almost going to be like a placeholder before we draft a true wide receiver 1 next year. But ultimately, 2024 is about the development of Will Levis, and eventually, if he becomes a good quarterback, of course, the wins will come. But this year, progress Will Levis, make sure everything's good, get better across the offensive line, which they did, and even if Will Levis is not the guy, then we have a good plan in place for the next guy if, in fact, Levis is not the guy. But that's all I have for the 2024 Titans preview. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please like and subscribe, as only about 39% of people watching are subscribed, and it helps the channel tremendously. Until next time, please be safe, and have a great day. Love you guys.